The Great Hall on Nexus Prime had never seen such panic. 12 different alien species filled the massive chamber, their voices mixing into a chaos of fear and confusion. Some looked like walking crystals that chimed when they moved. Others resembled giant butterflies with rainbow wings. Few had tentacles instead of arms and floated above the floor. Admiral Vexstar stood at the center podium, his crystal body flashing red with stress. He was one of the Althari people, tall and thin like living glass. When he spoke, his voice rang like bells through the translator devices that let all species understand each other. The Zephyrian Empire has taken 3 more worlds, Vexstar announced. It makes 15 Council worlds lost in just 2 months. Our defensive fleets cannot stop them. The chamber erupted in worried chatter. The butterfly-like Villani fluttered their wings in distress. The tentacled Aquari changed colors, from blue to deep purple, showing their fear. Even the plant-like Verdani, who usually stayed calm, rustled their leaves nervously. Dr. Elena Martinez sat in the small human section, watching everything with careful eyes. She was Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council, a job that felt more like being ignored than being important. The aliens had let humanity join their council 6 months ago, but most of them still thought Earth was just a backward planet with primitive people. Elena was a small woman with dark hair and intelligent brown eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform that looked plain next to the colorful alien clothing around her. She had spent years studying alien languages and customs, preparing for this role. But nothing had prepared her for watching an entire galaxy fall apart. "What do we know about their next target?" asked Counselor Kreisha, another Altharite whose crystal body glowed with worry. A holographic map appeared above the podium, showing the spiral galaxy with red dots marking conquered worlds. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The Zephyrians were moving toward the galaxy's center, where the most populated worlds were located. "Intelligence suggests they will attack the Harmony system next," Vexstar replied. 7 billion Villani live there. We have no way to evacuate them in time. The Villani representative, a creature named Silmoth, with wings like stained glass, let out a sound like breaking wind chimes. "My people cannot fight," she said through her translator. "Have no weapons, no soldiers. We grow food and make art. That is all we know." This was the problem with the Galactic Council, Elena thought. Every species in it had evolved from prey animals on peaceful worlds. They had never known war or violence. Technology was amazing. They could travel between stars, cure any disease, and create matter from energy. But they had no idea how to fight. The Zephyrians were different. They came from a world of constant danger, where only the strongest survived. They were natural predators, tall and covered in thick scales, with claws and teeth designed for hunting. When they discovered space travel, they brought their hunting instincts with them. "Perhaps we could negotiate," suggested Dr. Nolwyn. "Slug-like creature from the Mallory species. Offer them tribute or territory in the outer systems." "We tried that," Vexstar said sadly. "They killed our diplomats and used their ships for target practice." Elena had read the reports. The Zephyrians did not just conquer worlds, they enslaved entire populations. They turned peaceful garden worlds into military bases and forced captured aliens to work in their weapon factories. They showed no mercy to anyone. "What about hiding?" asked another counselor. "We could move our populations to the rim worlds, far from their territory, and abandon our homes." Silmoth's wings turned dark blue with grief. "Leave behind everything our ancestors built." The debate continued for hours, going in circles. Some wanted to surrender and hope for mercy. Others wanted to run and hide. A few talked about building better defensive shields. But Elena noticed that none of them seriously talked about fighting back. She understood why. These aliens had never hurt anything in their lives. Violence was completely foreign to them. They were like sheep trying to figure out how to deal with wolves, said Kreisha suddenly. "I remember something from the old database files. There was a world classified as Class 12 Deathworld in Sector 7G. The survey team said it had primitive inhabitants but was too dangerous to visit." Elena felt her heart skip a beat. Class 12 Deathworld. That was Earth's official classification in the Galactic database. A death world? Vextar's crystal body flickered with interest. What kind of primitives could survive on such a place? Reports were. Disturbing, Kreisha admitted. The entire planet is covered in predators, massive creatures that hunt. In packs, venomous plants, natural disasters that could destroy cities. The dominant species apparently evolved from persistence hunters. Alina almost smiled. The aliens made Earth sound like a nightmare world, which she supposed it was from their perspective. They came from planets where the biggest danger was maybe tripping over a rock. But they are primitive, another counselor pointed out. Help could they be against the Zephyrians? Perhaps none, Kreisha said. But if we are all going to die anyway, maybe it is worth asking. The chamber fell quiet. Lena realized this was her moment. She had been sitting in these meetings for months, watching the aliens barely acknowledge her existence. They spoke about Earth like she was not even there. She stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. The sound echoed in the sudden silence as hundreds of alien eyes turned toward her. Honored counselors, Alina said, her voice steady and clear. I could not help but notice you were talking about my homeworld. Several aliens looked surprised, as if they had forgotten humans were even in the chamber. Vextar's crystal body flashed. With embarrassment, Ambassador Martinez, he said carefully. We meant no offense. We were simply considering all options. It's no offense taken, Alina replied. But I think you might be interested to know that Earth's primitive inhabitants have been dealing with predators for millions of years. We know something about survival. She paused, looking around the chamber at all the frightened alien faces. These were good people, beings who had built a civilization based on peace, cooperation, and mutual aid. They did not deserve what was happening to them. My people have a saying, Alina continued. When peaceful people are threatened, they find wolves to protect them. The problem is, you invited the wrong species to your peaceful galaxy. The aliens looked confused. Alina walked closer to the center podium, her footsteps loud in the quiet chamber. You think Earth is primitive because we still have armies and weapons. You think we are backward because we know how to fight? But maybe, just maybe, that is exactly what you need right now. Vextar's crystal body was flashing rapidly, showing his nervous energy. Are you suggesting that your people could help us militarily? Alina nodded. I am suggesting that you should let me contact Earth and find out. Because right now you have two choices. You can keep talking about surrender and evacuation, or you can ask the Deathworlders for help. The chamber stayed silent for a long moment. Alina could hear the soft sounds of alien breathing, the rustle of wings, the gentle chiming of crystal bodies. Finally, Vextar spoke. Very well, Ambassador Martinez. Contact your homeworld. Tell them about our situation. But understand, we cannot offer much in return for help. Alina smiled for the first time in weeks. Admiral, you might be surprised what humans will do just because it is the right thing. She walked quickly toward the communication center, her mind already composing the message she would send to Earth. General Jack Morrison and the Stellar Defense Command needed to know that the galaxy was in trouble, and they needed to know that Earth was about to become the most important world in the galaxy, whether the aliens realized it or not. 3 days after Elena's message reached Earth, the space around Nexus Prime began to shimmer. The first sign was a small distortion in the stars, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Then the distortion grew larger and larger until it looked like a crack in space itself. The alien monitoring stations immediately detected the hyperspace signatures. Dozens of ships were coming through, far more than anyone expected. The Galactic Council had hoped that maybe Earth could send a few primitive vessels to help, perhaps 20 or 30 at most. Instead, 200 human warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Admiral Vextar stood in the orbital command center, watching his screens with growing amazement. The human fleet was massive, stretching across space like a steel wall. At the center was a ship so large it cast shadows on the smaller vessels around it. By the crystal spirits, whispered Counselor Kreisha, how many ships did they send? 212 vessels detected, reported the Althari sensor operator. including one dreadnought-class ship that is ... unusually large. The lead ship was indeed enormous. The USS Liberty was twice the size of the biggest council vessel, a gray mountain of metal bristling with weapons. Strange antenna arrays covered its hull. Rows of what looked like missile launchers ran along its sides. Captain Lisa Thompson stood on the Liberty's bridge, watching Nexus Prime grow larger on the main screen. She was a tall woman with short, blonde hair and steel-gray eyes that had seen too many battles. Her uniform was dark blue with silver stripes on the sleeves, and her expression was calm but alert. "Signal from the planet, Captain," reported Lieutenant Baker from the communications station. "They want to know our intentions." "Tell them we are here to help," Thompson replied, "and request permission to dock at their main station." Behind her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. These were men and women who had trained for years in Earth's military academies, studying tactics and strategy that the peaceful aliens had never needed to learn. They looked relaxed, but Thompson knew they were ready for anything. The docking process took 2 hours. The alien station was not designed for ships as large as the Liberty, so human engineers had to modify their docking ports. The aliens watched nervously as human technicians worked with tools that looked more like weapons than repair equipment. General Jack Morrison was the first to step onto the alien station. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands. From old battles, he had fought in 3 wars on Earth and commanded the defense of Luna Colony during the asteroid crisis. To him, this was just another mission. Dr. Elena Martinez met him at the airlock, looking relieved to see familiar faces. "General, thank you for coming so quickly, Elena." Morrison nodded. "We got your message." "How bad is the situation?" "Worse than I described," she admitted. "The Zephyrians have taken 17 worlds now. The Council is talking about surrender." Morrison's expression did not change, but Elena could see the anger in his eyes. On Earth, surrendering to bullies was not something humans did. Easily Captain Thompson joined them, along with several other human officers. The aliens in the corridor stopped to stare at them. Humans looked different from any species they had seen before. They moved with confidence, their eyes constantly scanning for threats, their hands never far from the weapons on their belts. The meeting took place in the same great hall where Elena had made her offer 3 days earlier. This time, the chamber was even more crowded, as curious aliens came to see the mysterious Deathworlders. General Morrison stood at the center podium, looking out at hundreds of alien faces. He had addressed Earth's United Nations many times, but this was different. These beings had never known war or violence. They were like children, asking adults to solve a problem they could not understand. "Honored counselors," Morrison began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation devices. "I am General Jack Morrison of Earth's Stellar Defense Command. We received Ambassador Martinez's message and came as quickly as possible." Admiral Vextar's crystal body was flashing rapidly with nervous energy. "General Morrison, we are grateful for your response. But we must ask, how many ships did you bring?" 212 vessels, Morrison replied matter-of-factly, including support ships, fighters, and 1 command dreadnought. The aliens looked at each other in amazement. The entire Galactic Council fleet had fewer than 300 ships. Most of those were exploration vessels or cargo haulers. "That is, more than we expected," Vextar admitted. Captain Thompson stepped forward. "General, if I may." Morrison nodded, and Thompson addressed the Council directly. "We understand you are facing an aggressive enemy," she said. "We would like to review their tactical capabilities and discuss defensive strategies." Counselor Kreisha activated the holographic display, showing the same galactic map Elena had seen before. Red dots marked the conquered worlds, and arrows showed the direction of Zephyrian attacks. Thompson studied the display for several minutes, her experienced eyes taking in details that the aliens had missed. Finally, she spoke. "Your enemy is using classic swarm tactics," she said. "Large numbers of fast ships, overwhelming local defenses before reinforcements can arrive. But their formations are predictable, and they leave their supply lines exposed. The aliens looked confused. Supply lines? Asked Silmoth, the Volani representative. How do they fuel their ships? Feed their crews? Repair battle damage? Thompson explained, every military force needs supplies. Cut off the supplies, and the force becomes helpless. This was a completely new concept to the peaceful aliens. They had never thought about the practical details of running a war. But how do we cut their supply lines? Vexstar asked. Thompson smiled, and several aliens shifted nervously. There was something predatory about that smile, something that reminded them that humans came from a death world. We attack them, she said simply. The chamber erupted in shocked chatter. The idea of attacking anyone was so foreign to the council species that many of them could not even process it. Attack them? Vexstar's crystal body turned pale. But that would mean ... violence. Yes, Morrison said, stepping forward again. It would. The Zephyrians understand only one language force. If you want to stop them, you have to speak their language. Dr. Elena Martinez moved to stand beside the other humans. She had been thinking about this moment for 3 days, knowing it would come. Counselors, I know this is difficult, she said gently. Your people have built a beautiful civilization, based on peace and cooperation, but sometimes peace must be defended with strength. We cannot ask our people to become killers, protested Dr. Nolwyn, the slug-like Mallory counselor. You do not have to, Thompson replied. That is what we are for. The chamber fell silent. The aliens began to understand what the humans were offering. They would do the fighting, the dying, the terrible work that the peaceful species could not do themselves. You would fight our battles for us. Silmoth asked quietly. We would fight beside you, Morrison corrected. This is not just your war anymore. The Zephyrians threaten innocent people. That makes it our war too. Admiral Vexstar looked around the chamber at his fellow counselors. Some looked hopeful, for the first time in months. Others still seemed frightened by the humans' direct approach. To solving problems? What do you need from us? Vexstar asked finally. Intelligence on enemy positions, star charts, and access to your communication networks, Thompson replied, and trust. We know you find our methods disturbing, but we are good at what we do. How good? Kreisha asked. Morrison's expression became serious. Counselor, humans have been fighting wars for 10,000 years. We have studied every battle, learned from every defeat, perfected every tactic. We know how to stop bullies like the Zephyrians. He paused, looking around the chamber at the frightened alien faces. You invited the wrong species to your peaceful galaxy, he said, echoing Elena's earlier words. You brought in predators from a death world. Lucky for you, we are on your side. The vote was close, but the council agreed to accept human military assistance. As the aliens filed out of the chamber, many of them casting nervous glances at the human officers, Alina felt both relief and worry. Relief that help had finally arrived. Worry about what her people might have to become to save this peaceful galaxy. Captain Thompson approached her as the chamber emptied. Alina, I need to ask you something important. What is it? Are you ready to watch us do what we do best? Alina looked at the captain's hard eyes and scarred hands. She thought about the gentle aliens who had never known violence and the brutal Zephyrians who understood nothing else. Yes, she said quietly. I think the galaxy is about to learn why Earth is classified as a death world. The alarm bells on Harmony 7 had been ringing for 6 hours. 50,000 Zephyrian soldiers had landed on the peaceful agricultural world, and their massive transport ships blocked out the sun. The Volani farmers who lived there had no weapons, no armies, and no way to fight back. Commander Ryan Kelly stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, watching the enemy fleet through his view screen. 40 Zephyrian warships surrounded the planet like hungry wolves circling sheep. Ships were sleek and black, covered in spikes and weapon ports that glowed red in the darkness. Sir, we have visual on the enemy, reported Lieutenant Davis from the sensor station. 40 ships, various classes. They have not noticed us yet. Kelly nodded grimly. His task force included only 13 ships, the Defiant and 12 escort vessels. By any reasonable calculation, they were outnumbered 3-1. But Ryan Kelly had not gotten his command by being reasonable. He was a tall man with dark hair and calm green eyes. He had earned his promotion during the Mars Rebellion, where he learned that sometimes the best way to win a fight was to hit first and hit hard. "Signal the fleet," Kelly ordered. "Attack formation Delta. We go in fast and mean." On Nexus Prime, Admiral Vexstar and the other council members watched the battle through long-range sensors. They had sent their fastest diplomatic ship to try, negotiating with the Zephyrians, but it would not arrive for another 2 hours. The human fleet had reached Harmony 7 first. 13 ships against 40, whispered Counselor Kreisha. "The humans will be destroyed." Dr. Alina Martinez stood. Behind them, her hands clenched with worry. She had faith in human military skill. But the numbers looked terrible even to her. The battle began without any of the formal warnings or negotiations that usually started conflicts in council space. The human ships simply appeared at the edge of the system and immediately began accelerating toward the enemy at maximum speed. The Zephyrians were caught completely off guard. They had been in the middle of loading Villani civilians onto slave transports when their sensors detected the approaching human fleet. "Captain," Morthok commanded the Zephyrian force from his flagship, the Blood Hunter. He was a massive reptilian creature with scales like black armor and claws that could tear through metal. When he saw the human ships on his screen, he laughed with genuine amusement. 13 ships, he hissed to his crew. These mammals must be even more stupid than the council species. But his laughter died as the human formation approached. The ships moved in a pattern he had never seen before, not in the neat lines that council fleets used, but in a complex weaving formation that made it impossible to target them effectively. Lieutenant Sarah Adams led the first wave of human fighters from her carrier ship. She was young, barely 25, but she had trained on the combat simulators since she was 16. Her squadron of 30 fighters looked tiny compared to the massive Zephyrian warships. "Thunder Squadron, this is Thunder Leader," she announced. "Over the radio, remember what they did to the civilians on Kepler Station? Make them pay." The human fighters dove straight into the Zephyrian formation, their weapons blazing. But instead of trying to dogfight with enemy fighters, they targeted the big ships directly, flying so close to the holes that point defense systems could not track them. "Captain." Morthok watched in amazement as the tiny human fighters swarmed over his cruiser like angry insects. Their weapons were smaller than his, but they struck the same spots over and over until armor plating began to crack. "What are they doing?" demanded his weapons officer. "Those fighters should be staying at long range. They're not fighting like any species we have encountered," Morthok admitted. "Order all ships to close formation. We'll crush them with superior numbers." But the humans had no intention of fighting a traditional battle. Commander Kelly's escort ship suddenly broke formation and accelerated directly toward the largest Zephyrian vessels. Instead of firing their weapons at maximum range like civilized warriors, they closed to point-blank distance before opening fire. The USS Ranger, a small human destroyer, flew straight at a Zephyrian heavy cruiser that was 5 times its size. The alien ship's captain assumed the humans would turn away at the last moment. Instead, the Ranger opened fire with everything it had at a range of less than a kilometer. The Zephyrians' shields flared and died under the concentrated fire. Hull armor melted away like paper. The cruiser tried to return fire, but its weapons were designed for long-range combat and could not track targets that close. On Nexus Prime, the alien observers watched in shock as human tactics defied everything they understood about space combat. "They are ramming the enemy ships," gasped Silmoth, her butterfly wings trembling with fear and amazement. "Not ramming," Alina corrected, though her voice was tight with worry. "Brawling. They are turning a space battle into a knife fight." Human fighters were taking heavy casualties. Lieutenant Adams watched 3 of her pilots die in explosions of light and metal, but she kept her squadron focused on their targets. Human military doctrine was clear: accept losses to achieve objectives. "Thunder 6 is down," reported one of her pilots. "Thunder 9 has lost engines." "Keep hitting those cruisers," Adams ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Every shot counts." Her fighter spiraled between the massive Zephyrian ships, dodging energy beams that could have vaporized her instantly. She lined up on a weapons, and fired her remaining missiles at point-blank range. The explosion lit up space like a small sun. When the light faded, the Zephyrian cruiser's main gun was gone, twisted metal drifting in the void. "This is for every world you have burned, you bastards." Adams transmitted on an open channel as she pulled away from the wreckage. Her words were picked up by every ship in the battle, human and alien alike. On the Council monitoring stations, the aliens heard raw human emotion, not the calculated aggression of the Zephyrians, but something far more dangerous. Personal fury directed at those who hurt innocent people. Commander Kelly's flagship, the Defiant, engaged Captain Morthock's Bloodhunter in direct combat. The two ships circled each other like ancient sailing vessels, trading devastating broadsides at close range. "Their shields are adapting to our energy weapons," reported the Defiance. Weapons Officer Kelly smiled grimly. This was exactly what human engineers had prepared for. Switch to kinetic penetrators. "Let's see how their shields handle good old-fashioned metal." The Defiance torpedo tubes fired modified warheads, not energy weapons, but simple chunks of dense metal accelerated to incredible speeds. The Zephyrian shields, designed to deflect energy beams, offered no protection against solid projectiles. The metal slugs punched through the blood. Hunter's hull like bullets through paper. Captain Morthock felt his ship shudder as atmosphere vented from dozens of holes. "Impossible," he snarled. How did they adapt so quickly? His science officer, a smaller Zephyrian with worried yellow eyes, checked his instruments. "Sir, their tactics make no sense. They sacrifice smaller ships to position larger ones. They accept casualties that would break any civilized force. They fight like ... double quotes, like what? Like cornered animals, sir. Like predators defending their territory." The battle raged for another hour. Human ships were destroyed, their crews dying, in explosions that lit up the darkness. But for every human vessel lost, 2 Zephyrian ships were crippled or destroyed. The turning point came when the USS Ranger, badly damaged but still fighting, rammed directly into a Zephyrian battleship. The human captain, knowing his ship was doomed anyway, aimed for the enemy's engine section and hit at full speed. Both ships died in the collision. But the explosion took out 2 more Zephyrian vessels that were too close to escape the blast. Captain Morthock realized with growing horror that he was losing. His ships were bigger, his weapons more powerful, but the humans fought with a savage determination that his forces could not match. "Sir, we have lost 18 ships," his tactical officer reported. "The humans have lost only 7. Morthock looked at his screens, watching human fighters swarm over his remaining vessels like angry wasps. These Deathworlders fought without fear, without hesitation, and without mercy for those who threatened innocent people. "Signal the fleet," he ordered reluctantly. "All ships retreat. Now we withdraw to the outer system." The remaining Zephyrian ships broke off from combat and fled toward the edge of the system, leaving behind their dead and their plans to enslave the Villani population. Commander Kelly watched them go, his ship's bridge scarred and smoky from battle damage. 12 of his 13 ships were still operational, though most were badly damaged. The Zephyrians had lost 32 vessels. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Harmony 7, reported his communications officer. "Would it?" Through the view screen showed a Villani farmer, his butterfly wings bright with gratitude and amazement. "Human ships, this is Governor Felmar of Harmony 7. We ... We do not know how to thank you. You saved 7 billion lives today." Kelly's expression softened slightly. This was why humans fought, not for glory or conquest, but to protect those who could not protect themselves. "Governor, just take care of your people. That is thanks enough." On Nexus Prime, the alien observers sat in stunned silence. They had witnessed something unprecedented, a Zephyrian fleet defeated and driven off. The impossible had happened. Emperor Thraxkull stood in his war room on the fortress world of Scarhigh, staring at the battle reports with growing anger. The massive Zephyrian ruler was 12 feet tall, covered in black scales that gleamed like armor. His claws could crush steel, and his teeth could bite through bone. He had conquered 47 worlds and never known defeat. Until now. "Explain this to me again," he growled at his intelligence chief, a smaller Zephyrian named Keshra, who trembled. "Before his Emperor's rage, the humans at Harmony 7 used tactics we have never encountered," Keshra said nervously. "They accepted casualties that would break any rational force. They fought at close range where our advantages meant nothing, and they adapted their weapons during the battle itself." Thraxgill watched the recorded footage again. Human fighters diving directly into his formation, accepting 50% losses to deliver devastating attacks. Human ships ramming his vessels, rather than retreating when damaged. It was madness, but it worked. "These are not like the Council species," he admitted. "Show me everything we know about their homeworld." The holographic display changed to show Earth, a blue and green planet covered in oceans and continents. But as the details appeared, Thraxgill began to understand why these humans fought so differently. Class 12 Deathworld, Keshra read from the files. Gravity, 1.2 times galactic standard. Extreme weather patterns. Massive predators in every environment. Volcanic activity. Frequent asteroid impacts. The dominant species evolved as persistence hunters on a world where everything was trying to kill them. Thraxgill studied the images of Earth's creatures. Massive sharks with rows of teeth. Huge cats that hunted in packs. Bears that could tear apart trees. Even the plants on this world were dangerous, some of them poisonous enough to kill with. "A touch. No wonder they fight without fear," he muttered. "On their world, fear means death." Meanwhile, across Council space, human forces were spreading like wildfire. Captain Lisa Thompson had divided her fleet into smaller task forces, each one led by experienced human commanders who brought their own style of warfare to the galaxy. Colonel Janet Brooks had established a training camp on the moon of Althor Prime, where she was attempting to teach basic military tactics to alien volunteers. It was not going well. "Remember, when the enemy charges, you stand your ground and fire," Brooks explained to a group of nervous Vallani recruits. The butterfly-like aliens fluttered their wings anxiously as they held human-made rifles that looked enormous in their delicate hands. "But what if they keep coming?" asked Centaur, a young Vallani whose wings were bright yellow with fear. "Then you keep firing until they stop," Brooks replied patiently. The concept was alien to them. On their peaceful worlds, when threatened, animals ran away or hid. The idea of standing and fighting was completely foreign. Brooks was a tough woman with short red hair and patient green eyes. She had trained recruits on Mars and knew how to work with different kinds of people. But teaching warfare to beings who had never known violence was the hardest assignment of her career. "Colonel, what if we hurt someone?" asked another recruit. "A plant like Verdani whose leaves rustled with worry." Brooks sighed. "Yes. Sometimes, to protect innocent people, good people have to do hard things. That is what soldiers do." She pointed to a holographic display showing Zephyrian occupation forces. "On conquered worlds, look at what they do to civilians. Your job is to make sure that never happens again." The alien recruits looked at the images of enslaved populations and destroyed cities. Slowly, their fear began to change into something else: determination. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Bobby Turner was running a very different kind of operation. His Special Forces team had infiltrated the occupied world of Kepler Station, where they were working with the local resistance movement. Turner was a quiet man with dark skin and intelligent brown eyes. He specialized in covert operations, the kind of fighting that happened in shadows and back alleys. His team of 20 human soldiers was training 300 alien civilians in guerrilla warfare. "Remember, hit them fast and disappear," Turner explained to a group of Mallory rebels. "Do not try to fight fair. Fair fights are for people who want to lose." The slug-like aliens were better suited for this kind of warfare than traditional battles. They could move through small spaces and blend into crowds in ways that larger species could not. "We damaged their supply depot last night," reported Velosh, a Mallory who had become one of Turner's best students. "But they are bringing in more guards." Good, Turner smiled. "More guards means they are worried."
I worry.
Enemies make mistakes. His team had been on Kepler Station for 2 weeks, and already the Zephyrian occupation forces were struggling. Convoys were being ambushed. Communication towers were being destroyed. Their soldiers were afraid to patrol alone. The Zephyrians had conquered many worlds, but they had never faced an enemy that refused to give up. Turner and his rebels, struck from hiding, disappeared into crowds. Struck again before the enemy could respond. Back on Earth, Dr. Elena Martinez was working on a different kind of problem. She had established field hospitals near the combat zones, treating both human and alien wounded. What surprised her was how many Zephyrian prisoners they were taking alive. "Doctor, we have another group of injured prisoners," reported Nurse Kelly Davis, a young woman who had volunteered for the dangerous assignment. Alina looked up from the Villani patient she was treating. "How many?" 12 Zephyrians from the battle at Beacon Station. Captain Thompson's crew pulled them out of their damaged ship. This was something new in galactic warfare. The Zephyrians had never taken prisoners. They'd either killed their enemies or enslaved them. But the humans were different. Even in the heat of battle, they tried to save enemy soldiers who were helpless. Alina walked to the prisoner ward, where 12 injured Zephyrians lay on medical beds. They looked confused and frightened, unable to understand why their enemies were healing them instead of killing them. One of them, a young soldier named Corthral, had been badly burned when his ship's engine exploded. Alina had spent 6 hours in surgery saving his life. "Why?" Corthral asked through the translator device. "Why do you heal your enemies?" Alina sat down beside his bed. "Because that is what doctors do. We heal people who are hurt no matter who they are." The concept was as foreign to Corthral as warfare was to the council species. In Zephyrian culture, the weak died and the strong survived. Mercy was seen as weakness. "Your people are strange," he said finally. "You fight like demons, but you show kindness to those you defeat." Alina smiled sadly. "We fight because we have to. We show mercy because we choose to. That is what makes us human." The biggest test came when Captain Thompson's fleet engaged the Zephyrian Third Armada at Beacon Station. This was not a quick raid like Harmony 7, but a major battle that lasted 18 hours. Admiral Corthral, young soldier's father, commanded 60 Zephyrian warships against Thompson's force of 40 human vessels. He was determined to prove that the defeat at Harmony 7 was just lucky, but the humans had learned from their first battle. They had studied Zephyrian tactics and developed new strategies. When the enemy tried to use their speed advantage, human ships were ready. With faster missiles, when the Zephyrians attempted to jam communications, the humans switched to backup systems the aliens did not know existed. The battle raged across 3 star systems as both fleets maneuvered for advantage. Thompson's ships fought like a pack of wolves, coordinating their attacks and covering each other's weaknesses. Chief Engineer Amy Rodriguez worked frantically in the Liberty's engine room, keeping the ship's power systems running despite heavy battle damage. She was a small woman with oil-stained hands and an intuitive understanding of machinery that amazed even her human colleagues. "Captain, I can give you 20% more power to shields," she reported over the intercom, "but only for 10 minutes before the generators overload." "Do it," Thompson ordered. "We need every advantage we can get." The turning point came when Admiral Corthral's flagship was disabled by a coordinated attack from 3 human destroyers. The massive Zephyrian dreadnought lost power and began drifting helplessly toward a nearby asteroid field. Thompson faced a choice. She could finish off the enemy flagship and eliminate a dangerous opponent, or she could risk her own ship to save the lives of her enemies. "Signal the rescue shuttles," she ordered. "We are going to pull them out." Her crew looked surprised, but they obeyed without question. Human rescue shuttles flew through enemy fire to reach the damaged Zephyrian ship, pulling out survivors even. As the hull began to break apart, Admiral Corthral found himself rescued by the same humans who had defeated him. As he was carried aboard the Liberty, he stared at Captain Thompson with something approaching wonder. "Why?" he asked, echoing his son's question from weeks earlier. Thompson looked at the injured Zephyrian commander. this proud warrior who had expected to die in battle. Because tomorrow, maybe you will remember this day and choose mercy over cruelty. Word of Thompson's actions spread through both fleets. The remaining Zephyrian ships, seeing their admiral rescued by his enemies, began to question everything. They had been taught about warfare and honor. For the first time in their history, Zephyrian fleet surrendered rather than fight to the death. The Crimson Nebula stretched across space like a red wound in the stars. Inside its swirling clouds of gas and cosmic dust, the largest space battle in galactic history was about to begin. Emperor Thraxkull had gathered every remaining Zephyrian warship into one massive fleet, determined to end the human threat once and for all. General Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Constitution, watching the enemy formation through the nebula's red haze. His combined fleet included not just human ships, but vessels from every council species. For the first time in galactic history, prey animals were sailing into battle alongside apex predators. Enemy fleet strength. Morrison asked his tactical officer. 347 Zephyrian vessels, sir, Lieutenant Commander Barnes replied, including the Emperor's personal dreadnought, the Void Render. Morrison nodded grimly. His own fleet numbered 290 ships, but half of them were crewed by aliens who had learned to fight only in the past few months. The odds were not good, but then again, humans had never been intimidated by bad odds. Beside him, Admiral Patricia Hayes studied the tactical displays with experienced eyes. She was a small woman with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that had seen more battles than most people could imagine. She had commanded the defense of Europa during the Ice Pirates raids and knew how to coordinate multi-species fleets. General, I recommend we use Formation Omega, Hayes suggested. Put the human ships on the flanks and let the alien vessels provide support fire from the center. Agreed, Morrison replied. Signal all ships. We go in hard and fast. On the Zephyrian, flagship Emperor Thraxkull prepared for what he knew would be his final battle. Win or lose, this fight would decide the fate of the galaxy. He was no longer the confident conqueror who had started this war. Months of fighting humans had taught him that victory was not guaranteed, even for the strongest predator. All ships, report ready, my Emperor, announced his fleet commander, General Vexkoth. Thraxkull looked out at his armada through the red clouds of the nebula. These were the survivors of a dozen battles, ships crewed by warriors who had learned to respect their human enemies. They would fight well, but he wondered if it would be enough. Signal the fleet, he ordered. Today we end this war, one way or another. The battle began with a thunderous exchange of fire as both fleets closed the distance. But something was different this time. The alien ships that had once fled at the first sign of violence now held their positions and returned fire with determination their enemies had never seen before. Captain Danny Foster led a squadron of human destroyers in a flanking attack against the Zephyrian left wing. His ships moved like dancers through the nebula, using the gas clouds for cover as they struck at enemy supply vessels. Foster was young for a ship captain, barely 30, but he had learned space combat from the best human instructors. His tactics were unorthodox even by human standards. He used the nebula's electromagnetic interference to hide his approach, then struck like lightning at the enemy's weakest points. Target their fuel tankers, he ordered his weapons officer. No fuel, no fight. His destroyers punched through the Zephyrian formation, their missiles finding the vulnerable support ships that kept the enemy fleet operational. Explosions bloomed, like flowers in the red mist, as fuel depots and ammunition carriers died in brilliant flashes. On the other side of the battle, Commander Linda Walsh led her marine assault teams in boarding actions against damaged Zephyrian vessels. Instead of destroying enemy ships, the humans were capturing them. Adding their firepower to the Allied fleet, Walsh was a tough woman with brown hair, scars on her hands from hand-to-hand combat training. She had served in the asteroid belt, conflicts, and knew how to fight in zero gravity better than most people could walk. Remember, we want prisoners, not corpses, she told her Marines as they prepared to board a crippled Zephyrian cruiser. These people can change sides if we give them a reason. The boarding action was swift and efficient. Human Marines moved through the enemy ship like ghosts, stunning rather than killing the crew wherever possible. Within an hour, the cruisers' weapons were firing at its former allies. In the center of the battle, the alien crews proved they had learned more than just tactics from their human teachers. The Villani gunners, who had once been too gentle to hurt a flower, now operated their weapons with deadly precision. The Mallory engineers, who had never seen violence, kept their ships running despite heavy damage. Captain Silmoth Villani, who had once begged for peace, now commanded a squadron of her people's warships with surprising skill. Her voice rang clear over the communications channel as she coordinated attacks with human ships. "This is Harmony Squadron to Constitution. We have clear shots at enemy formation center. Requesting permission to engage." General Morrison smiled as he heard the determination in her voice. "Permission granted, Silmouth. Show them what you have learned." The Villani ships opened fire with weapons designed by human engineers, but operated by alien crews who fought to protect their homes. Their shots were precise and deadly, punching through Zephyrion shields with scientific accuracy. The climax of the battle came when Emperor Thraxgull himself challenged Captain Lisa Thompson to single combat between their flagships. The massive Void Render faced off against the scarred and battle-tested USS Liberty in a duel that would become the stuff of legends. Thompson stood on her bridge, watching the enemy dreadnought approach through the swirling red mist of the nebula. Her ship was smaller than the Emperor's vessel, but it had been through more battles and carried the experience of a crew that had learned to trust each other completely. "All batteries target their main weapons," she ordered calmly. "Chief Rodriguez, I need everything you can give me." In the engine room, Amy Rodriguez worked frantically to squeeze every ounce of power from the Liberty's damaged systems. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits as she pushed the ship beyond its design limits. "Captain, I can give you full power for maybe 20 minutes, she reported over the intercom. "After that, we risk complete system failure." 20 minutes is all we need, Thompson replied. The two giant ships circled each other like ancient sailing vessels, trading devastating broadsides at close range. The Liberty's armor was scored and blackened from previous battles, while the Void Render gleamed with fresh paint and untested pride. But Thompson had advantages that Thraxgull had never considered. Her crew had learned to work together through dozens of battles, anticipated each other's needs, and covered each other's mistakes with the precision of a well-oiled machine. When the Liberty's forward shields failed, the damage control teams had backup power restored before the Emperor could exploit the weakness. When the Void Render tried to jam their communications, the humans switched to hand signals and light codes they had practiced for months. The duel lasted 3 hours, with both ships hammering each other at point-blank range. Finally, a lucky shot from the Liberty penetrated the Void Render's engine section, crippling the massive vessel and leaving it drifting helplessly. Thompson faced the same choice she had made at Beacon Station. She could finish off her defeated enemy, or she could show mercy to a worthy opponent. "Prepare rescue shuttles," she ordered, without hesitation. "We are going to pull them out." Emperor Thraxgull found himself rescued from his dying ship by the same humans who had defeated him. As he was brought aboard the Liberty, wounded but alive, he looked into Captain Thompson's eyes and saw something he had never expected to find in an enemy: respect. "Why do you save those you defeat?" he asked, his voice weak from his injuries. Thompson helped him to a medical chair, her movements gentled despite the fact that this alien had ordered the deaths of millions. "Because that is what separates us from monsters," she replied. "We fight when we must, but we choose mercy when we can." General Morrison arrived on the Liberty an hour later to accept the formal surrender of the Zephyrian Empire. But instead of a traditional surrender ceremony, what followed was something unprecedented in galactic history: a negotiation between former enemies who had learned to respect each other. Dr. Alina Martinez served as translator and mediator, helping both sides understand that this war had changed everyone involved. The peaceful aliens had learned that sometimes violence was necessary to protect the innocent. The aggressive Zephyrians had learned that strength without honor was just brutality. Emperor Thraxgull, his wounds treated by the same human doctors, who cared for injured civilians, made a statement that shocked his own people. We have been wrong. Strength without mercy is not strength at all. It is weakness disguised as power. The peace negotiations took place aboard the Constitution, with representatives from every species in the galaxy. General Morrison and Dr. Martinez worked together to create something that had never existed before, a treaty that turned former enemies into allies. The Nexus Accords, as they became known, established humanity as the galaxy's protectors, while giving the Zephyrians a chance to redeem themselves through service to the very people they had once tried to conquer. We did not come to your galaxy to be conquerors, Morrison explained to the assembled delegates. We came because someone needed help. That is what humans do.